Morning, Botai, Erev Shabbat Shalom, Tizkor Shem Rabot Na'imot V'Tovot. So there's an interesting halacha that the walls of the sukkah have to be sturdy enough to withstand what Chazal call a ruach mitzuya, a regular breeze, which means that it has to be made of a solid material so that it doesn't flap in the wind whenever there's a breeze, which would mean, according to this, all sorts of solid materials are fine. Whereas there are limitations. What the schach is able to be made out of has to grow from the ground, not mekabil tum'ah, v'chule. But with regards to the walls of the sukkah, there are no limitations in terms of material. You can use wood, you can use metal, you can use plastic. It doesn't matter as long as it's solid enough to withstand a ruach mitzuya, this regular type of breeze. However, all sorts of materials, for instance, cloth and things of that nature, which cannot stand the regular breeze. When a regular breeze comes, you see them flapping in the wind. That means it doesn't withstand that breeze. Those materials are pasul. They are invalid for walls of the sukkah. And therefore, the fact that such sukkot are sold on the market doesn't necessarily lend itself to the kashrut of such sukkot. So person has to be very careful. When you see such sukkot made out of fabrics and the like, those are actually pasul. However, they're pasul as is, but there are things that can be done in order to make it kasher for the mitzvah of sukkah using the Talmudic concept of lavud. Lavud means, according to Torah law, when you have two substances and they are two materials that are less than 3 tfachim. 3 tfachim is approximate, every tefach is about 8 inches, 8 centimeters, approximately 24 centimeters, or 9.4 inches is 3 tfachim. If they are less than that away from each other, it's considered sealed. And therefore, what you can do is, forget about the flappy material for a second. If you have a material sukkah, you also have a frame. If you tie rope from one pole to another on each of the walls of the sukkah, you only need 3 walls. So you need the rope to go from point A to point B, and then from B to C, and then from C to D. You need it at least on 3 sides. You count, listen carefully, from the floor, from the ground, you count, it's got to be less than 3 tfachim, so approximately 9 inches, no more. You tie a rope. Then you count another 9 inches, tie another rope. You count another 9 inches, you tie another rope. You reach a minimum of 10 tfachim. 10 tfachim is 80 centimeters, approximately 34, 35 inches. Once you have that minimum height, and you go around all of these 3 walls, those will then be considered your halachic walls. But what are you talking about? I'm looking at rope and air between them. According to the Torah, those are considered walls. Once it hits a minimum level of 10 tfachim, those are your walls. Then you can just have the posts. You want to put the material, you want to put the fabric, you don't. That's for privacy. Those are not your walls. Your walls are what you made using the concept of lavud and the rope. And then what? Even though it doesn't touch the schach, hey, wait a second, it only reaches 10 tfachim. There's another Talmudic concept called god asik mechitzata, which means that when your wall reaches at least 10 tfachim, even if it's not touching the schach, as long as the schach is directly above it, it's considered sealed from there until the schach. Multiple halachic loopholes that are being used to be machshir such a sukkah. And in that way, people don't realize, but you spend X amount of money on those kinds of sukkot, and when they come, some of them come with the lavud straps, some of them don't. Sometimes even the ones that come with the Velcro lavud belts, you have to measure to make sure it's not more than 9 inches in between, because sometimes it's more and that doesn't help you. Sometimes you have to use your own rope. So you spent X amount of money on that sukkah, but it could very well be pasul, but you could fix it easily with a minimal investment, just even with a few cents, to buy rope and make the sukkah kasher me'adrin. Just have to make sure that the rope is tied. Doesn't necessarily have to be rope. You can use bungee cord, whatever. As long as it's tight and not flapping in the wind and not drooping, your sukkah will then be kasher using this method. So it's important for all those who don't have their walls of the sukkah made out of solid materials. Make sure you do this at home. Yeah, sometimes they say don't try this at home. Definitely try this at home to make sure that your sukkah is kasher according to halacha, and that your yotzei the mitzvah and the brachot that you're making in the sukkah throughout Sukkot are not a bracha levatala. Have a wonderful day and Shabbat Shalom V'Vorach.